She was 60 years old, yet her silence still trembled like a wounded sky. She walked through the world the way broken dawn walks across a battlefield. Soft, slow, yet carrying the weight of memories no one could measure. Her hands were old, but the lines inside them were not wrinkles. They were maps of every place where she had been hurt. Every night she had spent stitching her heart back together with faith. And every morning where she pretended she was strong enough to keep going. People looked at her and only saw age. But age was the smallest truth about her. The real story lived behind her eyes, where storms still clung to the edges of forgotten dreams, and where love still glowed even after everything around her had turned to dust. She carried pain like some women carried roses. Carefully, quietly, with a grace that felt almost holy. No one knew how much she had given, how much she had lost, how many times she had been asked to stay silent, when her heart was breaking loud enough to shake the sky. There were moments when she wanted to scream her story into the wind. But the world had never learned to listen to women like her. Women who endured instead of complained, who healed others even when their own wounds were bleeding. Women who stood tall even when fate kept trying to bend their spine. Her childhood was stolen in pieces. Her youth was spent wiping tears that were not hers. And her life became a long hallway of sacrifice, where every door she opened led to more giving, more losing, more carrying. But still she walked. Still she rose. Still she breathed. Still she loved. Her voice had become softer with age, but her heart had become louder. Every beat echoed with stories no one had dared to ask. Stories that trembled like wounded birds in the nest of her memories. People saw an old woman, but if they had looked closer, so close that they could hear the quiet wars inside her, they would have seen the truth. She was not 60 years old. She was thousands of broken nights stitched into a single body. She was decades of sacrifice molded into one fragile smile. She was a lifetime of pain taught to walk like grace. And when she looked at the world, there was no anger in her face. Only a deep, calm acceptance. The kind that only comes from surviving storms that were meant to drown her. She still remembered every pain. Not because she was weak, but because remembering was the only proof that she had lived through all of it, and still found a way to stand. Her heart was a museum of moments she never told anyone about, because some pains were too sacred to be spoken, too heavy to share, too deep to trust in the hands of the world. Yet she carried them. She carried them with the strength of someone who knew what it meant to be abandoned, what it meant to be unseen, what it meant to be hurt by people who pretended they loved her. Her tears had taught her wisdom. Her losses had carved her courage. Her loneliness had become her teacher, and her patience had become her shield. And somewhere inside that quiet, aging soul lived a girl who once laughed like sunlight, who once dreamed without fear, who once believed the world was gentle. A girl who still whispered inside her, even after 60 long years, "Don't give up, don't stop loving, don't stop hoping." Because that was her miracle. Not that she survived, but that she survived without letting her heart turn cold. Even now at 60, she still loved with the same softness the world had tried so hard to steal from her. And that softness, that quiet, stubborn love, was the strongest thing about her. She sat near the window every morning, letting the first light touch her face, like a child touching a mother it hasn't seen in years. The sun always greeted her gently, as if even the sky knew how much tenderness her heart had been denied in this world. Some days she would close her eyes and let the warmth rest on her eyelids, pretending the light was a hand she once trusted, a hand she once held, a hand that slipped away long before her soul was ready to let go. No one knew that every sunrise pulled old wounds awake inside her, memories that refused to die, shadows that followed her everywhere. voices that whispered from the past, like ghosts reminding her that love is not always kind, and life is not always gentle. She had lived a life where she learned that silence was safer than truth, that tears dried faster than explanations, and that sometimes the only way to survive was to pretend the hurt didn't hurt as much as it did. She had loved deeply once, so deeply that she gave the world everything she had and asked for nothing in return. But life does not always reward softness. Sometimes it devours it. And in her case, love left her with wounds that never completely healed. Her heart still remembered the nights she slept without sleep, the days she walked without breath, and the moments when she wished the pain would pause, just for a single heartbeat. But even then, she never cursed her fate. She never blamed God. She never questioned why love had chosen to break her instead of bless her. She simply accepted the hurt. With the same grace, she accepted everything in life, quietly, humbly, with eyes full of unspoken prayers. People often called her strong, but she knew strength was never a choice for her. It was a necessity, forced into her bones by years of holding herself together when no one else cared enough to hold her. She learned early that life would not slow down for her wounds. So she taught herself to walk with them, to breathe through them, to continue loving even when love felt like a knife, pressing deeper with every memory. Her smile fooled many, even her children, who believed she had moved on. Never knew how often she swallowed tears, so they would not see her break. They never knew that every time she told them, "I am fine," she was stitching her heart again, with threads that were running out. She looked fragile, but inside her lived a warrior, who had fought wars the world would never understand. Wars against loneliness, against disappointment, against broken promises, against dreams that died before they lived. And still, she chose kindness. She chose compassion. She chose forgiveness over bitterness, softness over anger, love over hate. That was her greatest miracle. She never let the world turn her into the monster it had been to her. There were days she would sit alone and talk to God in whispers. She would not ask for happiness. She would ask for peace, not for riches, but for rest, not for a long life, but for a gentle one. And even in those sacred conversations, her heart remembered everything, every betrayal, every farewell, every moment that broke her. But instead of asking God, "Why me?" she always said, "Give me strength to carry this pain with dignity." Because dignity was the last thing she owned, that the world had not taken from her. And she held on to it, the way drowning people hold on to breath. Even at 60, her heart beat like a book, full of chapters written in sorrow, but narrated with grace. And in those private, silent hours, when only God could hear her, she would whisper the truth she never told another soul. "Pain taught me how to live, but love taught me how to survive." And it was true, because despite everything, despite the bruises time left on her heart, she still believed that somewhere in this world, there was goodness worth living for, kindness worth giving for, and love worth suffering for. Her heart remembered every pain, not because she wanted to suffer, but because those memories were the bridges that carried her across the darkest rivers of her life and brought her safely into this quiet, aging dawn. She walked through life as if carrying nothing, but every step she took echoed the weight of memories. She never spoke aloud. People saw her hands trembling, but no one knew. Those hands had once carried entire worlds of pain without dropping a single tear in public. She had become an artist, of hiding storms behind calm faces, of turning heartbreak into politeness, of burying screams under gentle smiles. Her silence was not emptiness. It was protection, a shield forged from years of swallowing words that would have cracked her open if she dared release them. No one knew that every time she whispered, "I am okay," her soul was stitching itself with threads thinner than the courage she pretended to have. She had mastered the art of surviving quietly. Even her grief walked softly, afraid of making noise, in a world that never asked her why she fell silent in the first place. She lived in a house full of people, yet slept inside a heart that had been lonely for decades. Her room was small, but inside her memories, there were cities built from sorrow, roads leading to places she once dreamed of reaching, bridges she crossed alone, mountains she climbed with knees that shook, and hope that was fading, but never fully left her side. People often praised her patience, but they didn't know that patience was her punishment, forced upon her when life gave her choices she could not choose, and battles she never wanted to fight. She had waited for love once, waited like a desert waits for rain, but the rain never came, and when it finally did, it arrived only to wash away the little fragments of joy she had saved for herself.